Hello and welcome to another episode of the Afcon Diaries. Today is day 6, and I'm joined by two very good friends of mine. We have Alistair Haworth over here of the On the Whistle podcast, freelance journalist as well. And we have Alex Elia Chismic, also freelance journalist, collaborating with several media, mostly in Italian, I can say.
Yeah, Italian and international media, but at the moment I'm running my own newsletter on African football.
Okay. Let's recap the day. Oh yeah, Curato Willa. Subscribe on Substack. So let's recap the day. Day started off with a 4-2 victory, Equatorial Guinea over Guinea-Bissau. 6 goals in that game. Emilio Nsue scores a hat-trick, the first hat-trick in an African Cup of Nations since 2008. Alistair, let me ask you something. Is there any logical explanation for Emilio Nsue not being a prolific goal scorer with his club and then scoring so many goals with Equatorial Guinea?
Emilio Nsue is an amazing guy. I was lucky enough to speak to him a couple days ago, and he's remarkable because he came up he's born in Mallorca to a Mallorcan mother and an Equatorial Guinean father, grew up playing for Mallorca when they were in La Liga under Michael Laudrup. He played through every single Spanish youth team, so like U15, U17. I think he won the U21 Euros in 2011, 2012 with a great Spain team, and essentially it's kind of between him and Bojan were the two like up and coming center forwards. And then I think it was his second season at Mallorca, Michael Laudrup just said, and Nsue told me this, he said, you're terrible at finishing, so I'm going to put you out on the wing. And then from there, he just slowly went back and back and back to then when he left Mallorca he came to England, played at Middlesbrough, Birmingham. He then became a right back. But at this point, he still played as a center forward for Spain for their youth teams. And then when he eventually didn't make it to the Spain Olympic team, he decided to switch to Equatorial Guinea. And then he played as a center forward. And literally, it's incredible because on his debut for Equatorial Guinea, he scored a hat-trick and he was made captain for his first game. And the game, I think I can't remember who it was against, but they ended up, he was ineligible for that game because they hadn't finished his paperwork. So if you go through his records, even though he's already the Equatorial Guinean top scorer, he's still missing 3 goals because that game was ruled ineligible because he wasn't.
Did they lose points for that, do you think?
I can't remember. I can't remember.
Emilio Nsue, an Afcon legend. I think if any of you have been watching Afcon over the last, since 2015? Since then, yeah? You know the name. Alex, what are your thoughts of that match? What did you think of Guinea-Bissau? What did you think of their defending, conceding 4 goals?
Well, I would like to talk more about Equatorial Guinea.
It's true that Alex, you're on texting terms with the coach, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? Okay.
I really like his attitude, the attitude of Juan Micha. During the press conference, he said, "This is our chance to get through, so we have to win this game." So he didn't change much, and adopted very offensive. Very offensive, how can I say, system. I think that the key player at the moment is Jose Machin, who is performing very well, like connecting the midfield and the attack. Maybe the goal difference was too much, but I think that this is just the result of what Equatorial Guinea have been doing since many years. Yeah. And they are like bearing the fruits of their work, and probably 4 points will be enough to get through to the round of 16.
Equatorial Guinea were nominated as one of the sides, one of the national teams of the year during the CAF Awards, and they've been on a pretty good streak even through qualifying. Guinea-Bissau, I thought, looked a little naive defensively. Francolino Ju had a good game. He was nearly on the end of the first goal, but ended up being an own goal. But by his presence there, he pretty much forced that in. I think he was robbed of a penalty that was quite clear in my opinion as well. But let's move on to the second game. You guys were both at that match, if I'm not mistaken. Nigeria versus Cote d'Ivoire. This was a big one because Cote d'Ivoire came into this match with 3 points and Nigeria with 1 point. I think Cote d'Ivoire had a fairly positive first match, even though there were things to improve. In Nigeria, I think, they carried some pessimism into this tournament because of that international window, right, where they drew with Lesotho and Zambia. And Nigeria comes away with a victory. Alistair, were you surprised by this result? And what were your main takeaways from this match?
Yeah, I was, to be honest. I thought... I remember walking into the stadium and saying, I think the best case Nigeria can get out of this game is kind of scraping a draw and kind of let Cote d'Ivoire dominate and they get the draw. But I think that the tactical switch was just worked a charm. Like moving to the back three.
Were they playing a 3-4-3?
Yeah. So exactly. They brought in Calvin Bassey for Ibrahim Yusuf, who I think was actually my best player in their first game. I thought he was excellent. But I think he kept carrying a knock, and Bassey was brilliant. And they just essentially they accepted that Cote d'Ivoire was a better midfield than them. They accept that they would be dominated, and they just kind of played around that. And I thought that
Played
kind
direct,
of
yeah?
they played really direct. And again, with Victor Osimhen, you can watching him in the flesh is just unreal. Incredible. He's so good. Like every single thing he does is the right decision. I think they, obviously, I think it was a penalty, but it wasn't like they were dominating the game, but they managed the game so well. I was really surprised. I didn't think Nigeria had it in them because against Equatorial Guinea, they looked like a bunch of individuals. They didn't look like a team. But in this game, they just managed the occasion so well, in contrast to the Ivorians, who kind of lost their head. I'll let some of you guys talk about that. But I was really surprised by Nigeria and also quite surprised by Cote d'Ivoire.
Alex, do you have any thoughts about Cote d'Ivoire or Nigeria?
Let me just add something about Nigeria. I think that the Equatorial Guinea win put even more pressure on them. So I think that what's also...
They were more desperate, you think?
Yeah, of course, because Equatorial Guinea got to 4 points. They were starting the game with just 1 point. Can you imagine the spirit if they lose against Ivory Coast after the game? So I think they coped very well with a high pressure, and I think the change with one more center back and 3-4-3 was needed because Peseiro and his staff don't have the time to find a proper identity. They have to be very concrete. They have to be very. They have to try to build a very solid team, which can be, which doesn't have to make too many mistakes in a short-lived tournament. So I think this change was much needed and paid off. Ivory Coast, I think, probably they. I mean, it was a very intense match. Even despite, the humidity and the heat. So I wouldn't say that Ivory Coast performed bad. I think that just Nigeria put much effort, fought better, and was probably, when you're down, you have only 1 point. You have to fight until the last second. That's it. That was the difference, in my opinion.
Yeah, Nigeria's backs were against the wall, really, and they had to come up with a result, otherwise they were going home. I also agree with Alistair about Osimhen. I mean, watching him, I was watching on television and just seeing the amount of ground he covers, the way he harries defenders. You can never really take your eye off of him, and he has to be such a headache to defend against, right?
You go for it.
No, in the mix zone, Osimhen said that the players were told that they were going to change the system a couple of days before the game, so they didn't even try the system so much. They didn't practice it so much, but he said that he likes this system a lot, and that he thinks it's the best system in this moment for Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add about Osimhen is because I was trying to watch him throughout the game, like especially when he was off the ball. And what really struck me about him is like the way he talks and relates to the other Nigerian players. But you can just see every time, like there was one time where I think it was Chukwueze gave it to Iwobi, who gave it into Osimhen, and Osimhen kind of left it because he just assumed Chukwueze was like going to be making the run that he should have been making, and he got really frustrated with him. And you can see every time a Nigerian player makes a mistake, he kind of tells them off, but then he claps and then he encourages them. And it really struck me that we see so often in these tournaments, teams revolve around a single player and they take over the game, and it becomes all about them, and they really struggle. The team struggles because it has to go through them. Whereas with Osimhen, he kind of really brings up the level of everyone around him, and he's really I was really surprised at how much kind of leadership he showed. I was really struck by just kind of what a presence he was, both kind of on the ball, but also as a leader on the team.
I think the greatest of players tend to elevate, their teammates, not just put in their own great performances. Can we move on to the next match, or have one last thing to say? Can we move on to the next match?
I would like to say that during the Nigeria Media Day, I've got the chance to interview Osimhen.
Yes, 9 minutes,
but in the previous interview with, I think it was the social media manager, Nigeria's social media manager, Osimhen said, "Yeah, many people think I'm like rude, I'm polite on the pitch, but it's just that I care a lot. I want to give my best, and I want my teammates to give their best. So it's just a matter of caring about the game."
Okay. Let's move on to the final match. Speaking of teams who sometimes revolve around one player, Mohamed Kudus and Ghana. The storyline after the first match was that they were outplayed by Cape Verde, I think, and that's probably a fair assessment. Mohamed Kudus has been really the driving force for the Ghanaian Black Stars over the last... Hell, we can probably push that all the way back to the World Cup, if I'm not mistaken. I mean... And Egypt come in after drawing with Mozambique, and remember they played that weird tactical system to start the match with Salah behind the striker. And today was much more of a 4-3-3 with a ball-playing midfielder Imam Ashour in midfield and Mohamed Salah back on his right wing. Starboy. Alistair, what did you make of Mohamed Kudus today?
Oh my goodness! Like, I love watching Kudus because I think he brings all the best elements of Ghanaian football together, because he's kind of got this. He's incredibly physically dominant, unreal engine on him. He can play as an 8, he can run up and down the wing if he's on the wing. He's just and he gets through that at West Ham. He works so unbelievably hard. But then his technique is just crazy. His highlights reel in terms of his touches. And yeah, while watching him playing, it was just, particularly in the second half, you saw every time he got the ball, Egyptian players just kind of corralled around him, and every single time he just was so unflappable. Touch, pass, move the ball so well. It kind of, in that sense, he really actually, the person he kind of reminded me of was actually in the second half was Luka Modric. Just tight spaces, turn out, dribble, move the ball.
It's not really the same style of play, but it's a similar function of how he plays the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Press resistant, manipulating space around him and players around him. Yeah, absolutely. I could see that actually, yeah.
Yeah, and then, look, I'll be honest, the one thing I've always said about this Ghana team is it's a team of individuals, not a team. But when you've got an individual like Mohamed Kudus, it's not an issue. It's brilliant.
Might as well rely on him, exactly, yeah. What did you think of... Okay, is this fair to say? Is it fair to say that Egypt were better after Mohamed Salah came off with injury? Or do you think it was just the moment they were coming back into the match? They had also made subs. They took off Mohamed El Neni, for example. People believe he was a little bit of let's say a sterile performance from him. Do you think that Egypt were better without Mohamed Salah, or is that unfair to say?
Do you want me to answer?
I want you to answer, of course.
I've just watched the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Because Afcon means sometimes...
This is a behind-the-scenes insight.
Yeah, Afcon means sometimes that you can lose a game. Yeah. You cannot make it to a game because of some reasons. You never know.
This guy, yesterday, was with me until midnight. We were eating barbecue. He spills water all over his backpack. He started panicking because his laptop was in his backpack. He probably didn't sleep all night from the stress. Thankfully, his backpack works. This guy was in San Pedro, driving down with a cab driver that came all the way from Korhogo, from the northern Cote d'Ivoire. They broke down, and he probably had... How many hours of sleep do you have?
2, maybe.
And then, not to mention, they were at the other match, and then they arrived late for this match. So I'm going to give a little bit of my analysis on this one. Me personally, I thought Kudus absolutely made a difference, but also Majid Ashimeru, I think, was a good ball, progressed the ball very well in midfield. I think it's him, the combination of him and Kudus, alongside one of those defensive midfielders, I think is probably the way to go for Ghana. Besides that, I thought Semenyo did a good job of harrying defenders and being physical. Iñaki Williams and Jordan Ayew, I thought, were a little bit frustrating. I could see why Williams came off early, and I was actually a little surprised why Ayew didn't come off a little earlier. I think Jiku and Salisu were okay as well. But this match was one where I thought overall it was a good match back and forth, but in key moments there was some pretty poor defending and goalkeeping. I don't know if you guys saw those goals or not, but they were pretty poor at times. I wanted to ask you guys about one phenomenon that we've seen at this Afcon though. We've seen when a team scores a goal, either they score a second goal very quickly after, or the opposition scores right after. So it's we get these bunches of goals sometimes,
It happened the same in the first game.
It happened in the first game for sure. Equatorial Guinea and Guinea-Bissau. It didn't happen in the second game because there was only one goal. But in this match, I think we had 3 goals within the span of maybe less than 10 minutes, maybe. Yeah. you think that's due to anything? Did you guys give that any thought? Is this like a lack of concentration? What do you?
I think this game, one thing to keep in mind is like the environment. Like the crowd was so up for it. It genuinely was incredible, like the atmosphere, and I think that just kind of contributed to the chaos because it wasn't. Obviously, there was a lot more Ghanaians than Egyptians, but it was like a wall of noise every time either team was on the ball, and I think that part of it kind of contributed to it because we saw it. Both Egypt's goals were disastrous mistakes from Ghana defending, and I think that was a huge part of it. Is clearly Ghana are under the same kind of pressure as Nigeria. I mean, I was at their press conference, their post-match press conference after they lost to Cape Verde, and I have never been in such a hostile environment. Just like every single question was just like, essentially they weren't even questions. They were just saying like, Chris Hughton, you failed Ghana. How do you respond to that? Like it was, So I think the players are under enormous pressure, and we can see that. And I think that's. I don't know if we can say that about the other games, and that's why. But I think this Afcon is a bit different from a lot of previous ones, especially the last one because Cameroon didn't organize it super well, but also because of COVID. So the fans weren't there. There wasn't the kind of the same environment.
Medical protocol.
Exactly, and then as well as here. Cote d'Ivoire being so close to so many neighboring countries, we're getting huge amounts of fans for games that, traditionally at AFCONs we might not have gotten, particularly in the last kind of set of AFCONs that haven't been in places that are the most accessible for a lot of countries. So I think that also contributes to it. I think it just creates a more chaotic environment and allows for these things. But in terms of on the pitch, I don't know. I can't tell you the answer. I think it's
Maybe
interesting.
Them individually, yeah. All right, should we wrap up? Let's wrap up with this. After 2 match days in Group A, can we all agree that Guinea-Bissau is out? Yeah? Okay. Are we getting 3 teams coming out of Group A, or do you think Cote d'Ivoire is going to go through? Do you think Nigeria is going to go through it? I think Equatorial Guinea, with 4 points, should be through, right? Yeah. Nigeria have 4 points as well. Could this be one of those groups that we have three teams advance from?
Yeah, I think that's very likely. I mean, as brilliant as Equatorial Guinea have been, I think against Nigeria they did ride their luck. I think Jesus Oono was brilliant, and I think Victor Osimhen missed a couple chances. I think that because of that, I think Cote d'Ivoire will come at them. I can't really see Equatorial Guinea beating them, and if Cote d'Ivoire get a draw, all 3 of the teams will be on 4 points. And I don't think there's ever been a time, certainly not in the Afcon, I don't know about other tournaments with the best placed third team where 4 points doesn't get through. So I definitely think that all 3 of them will go through.
4th best third place teams qualified to the knockout stages. In the previous Afcon, there were 2 teams with 4 points and 2 teams with 3 points. Tunisia and Comoros being those teams. Alex, you agree? Three teams coming out of this group?
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Let's remind that Equatorial Guinea has a +2 goal difference and 5. They scored 5 goals, so this is very important. Unless they lose with a lot of difference against the last opponent, I think they will get through together with Nigeria and Ivory Coast. If Tunisia all the time can get through with 3 points and a bunch of goals scored, I think Equatorial Guinea can get through and deserve to get through.
And let's talk then about Group B. Ghana now have 1 point. Egypt have 2 points. Which of these sides is more in danger of not progressing? Egypt have to go on to play Cape Verde, and Ghana have to go on to play Mozambique. Which of these sides are in most danger of not progressing for you, Alistair?
Man, that is hard to answer, particularly having not seen the Cape Verde and Mozambique game. I just think watching Cape Verde was electric. I think they generated the most XG of any team at the Afcon so far against Ghana. But, I think Egypt having been out, I think a big part of that was a surprise factor because Cape Verde had not at an Afcon ever played that style of football before. I think they've been playing it in kind of qualifying, but last Afcon it was 3-4-3, incredibly defensive. So I think part of that took Ghana by surprise, and I don't think it will take Egypt by surprise. But at the same time, Mozambique were, brilliant against Egypt, really defensively solid, kind of didn't concede much, and we're talking about people who can progress the ball. They have those kind of players. They have, the guy who impressed me so much was Guimaraes, their midfielder who's kind of recently joined the team, and they'll have Jenny Katamo back, who's obviously, an electric player from Sporting, their top goal scorer in qualifying. So honestly, it's on a knife edge for me. I think I would probably say at this point Ghana might be the one that's more likely, but which is ludicrous to say, but I think it's true.
Could be, yeah, absolutely. What about you? You see it the same way as Alistair?
I would still say Ghana is in danger because they have 1 point and they're close to. They might get disqualified in the group stage for the second time in a row after they didn't fail since 1982 to go through to the knockout phase. So I mean, it's a huge pressure that both Cape Verde and Mozambique don't have.
All right, that's about it. Let's wrap up this podcast. We're in the media center of the Stade Félix Houphouët-Boigny. I think a lot of the journalists are still in the press conference or in the mix zone. I think we're all a little bit tired. I'm the only one going to Yamoussoukro tomorrow for Senegal versus Cameroon. I think we're just going to sign off there. You can follow Alex Ali Chismich on his Substack, Kuratawila. It's in Italian, but it's very, very, very good. You can follow, and just on his Twitter account as well. I'm going to link that in the description. You can follow Alistair also on Twitter. I'm going to link that. And also on the Whistle podcast, an actual proper podcast where they actually interview other people. And it's not just me talking to a webcam for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. Do follow both of them. And we're going to sign off here. And we'll pick it up again tomorrow for another edition of the Afcon Diaries.
Aquaba.
Aquaba.